Welcome to Cinemaholics. The film review you're about to hear is a clip from our most recent episode of the Cinemaholics podcast, hosted by Will Ashton and myself, John Negroni. To watch and listen to Cinemaholics every week live, follow us on YouTube. The link is in the description of this review. Enjoy the show. Little Fish, which is a sci-fi romantic drama. It's directed by Chad Hartigan. Have you seen anything from Chad Hartigan before? I'm not as familiar with him myself.
He did Morris from America, right?
Did he? Okay.
I think. I'm familiar with that film. I didn't see it. I know that was at Sundance a few years ago, and it got a warm response. But
just checked. You are correct. Yeah. Morris from America in 2016. He also made This Is Martin Bonner, and Luke and Bree are on a first date. So yeah, he's made a few films. I haven't seen any of these though, so I'm not as. This is a new film for me in the Chad Hartigan filmography.
I mean, I'm not as familiar with the other two films you mentioned, but just based on what I can perceive, that he sounds like a very Sundancey filmmaker. I'm kind of surprised this film was not in the 2021 Sundance Film Festival, but nevertheless, it is kind of fitting that we're watching it so shortly thereafter.
I'm surprised it's not like a Netflix film. This is IFC Films, but I was thinking of The Discovery while I was watching this, the Jason Segel film, a lot. Just kind of like the moodiness and the sort of like bleakness of the plot, which let's get into. So this film stars Olivia Cooke and Jack O'Connell as a couple that is, we start the movie like where they first meet and a romance is blossoming, but in the backdrop of their burgeoning love story is a pandemic, which is unique. It's people are getting something called NIA, I think it is, where for unexplained reasons, people are developing acute memory loss. And it's essentially a form of dementia that people are sort of getting seemingly at random. And there's no discernible cure. It can come at any time. And the film is kind of haunting. It's a very disturbing thought experiment. Just this idea that like people are like in this movie going around and then someone will be like, wait, I honestly don't know who you are. And it's pretty freaky. They really like set the stage with that whole aspect of the premise. And along the way, these two people are trying to hold on to each other. Jack O'Connell's character is named Jude, and he is slowly losing his memory. Some people lose it all at once. Other people like him, it just sort of fades away slowly over time. The film kind of interestingly tackles the different ways people respond to dementia. Some people get violent when they can't remember things. Other people are just a little bit more of like, oh yeah, I don't know who you are. So, and then just kind of like move along. And so kind of a sad film in a lot of ways. It's definitely one that I found myself. Yeah, it's pretty depressing.
Yeah. And
obviously like very, interestingly timed. The filmmakers made this right before the pandemic, so it was not, this was not filmed. I think this was filmed like a year before COVID was even a thing. So it's kind of incidental timing there. But yeah, that's kind of the setup. What do you think of this one, Washington?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like I'd heard all this high praise before. I think it has like a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. So I came in with some expectations of this, and when it started out, I wasn't digging it. Like the opening 10 or so minutes, I was like, this just seems like your average indie dramedy kind of thing. Like it just, like the performers are nice. It's a little weird to see, like you're mentioning off the air, Jack O'Connell doing an American accent, Olivia Cooke doing a British accent, but.
Hey, Cinemaholics, this is awkward. So I am inserting this after the recording because Will and I, you're not going to believe this, we made a mistake. That's true. It happens, once every couple of decades. So Will and myself thought that Olivia Cooke was doing a British accent in this movie and is an American. It's not true. Olivia Cooke is actually British. Obviously, we're embarrassed. We have considered leaving the podcasting business forever. We're still working that out. Updates to come. But for now, just wanted to insert this just to let you know, so you don't tell all your friends that Olivia Cooke is an American. And I hope the damage hasn't already been done. So back to the show. Is it even British too? Because it's like. It kind of is like British Irish a little bit.
Yeah,
I was very confused.
It fluctuated a lot. Neither of their accents are particularly strong. Jack O'Connell keeps going into like his real accent here and there, and then Olivia Cooke is having a little bit of trouble as well. But neither are like completely distracting. Like I thought, I'm
fine with it with O'Connell because it just gives me Skins flashbacks, which I want.
That's fair. But yeah, I mean, I think when it started out, I was like, like there's like they're trying to do like the evocative like Terrence Malick type, like like montage type stuff, and I was just like, I don't know, this just seems like your kind of traditional romantic dramedy indie type thing, and
Will's heart was stone, and it hardened even further as the film progressed.
But as the premise went along, I was kind of surprised like how much I was getting endeared to. I think its pacing is a little slack. Like I don't think like it gets kind of so wrapped up in the concept that I think there are moments where I think it almost feels maybe a little like too bleak because it's so caught up in the sadness of the premise that the story doesn't really progress much. But I do have to commend the film for having the patience that it does and allowing itself to have kind of complicated and contemplative conversations about like something like this that is very serious, and it does like fit to what we're dealing with right now in some respect, and I do think the two main performers are doing a nice job of keeping it grounded and finding the authenticity here, and by and large I liked it. I didn't love it the way some people are, but I was more endeared to this than I anticipated by the end.
Yeah, I didn't love it either. I think we're kind of on the same wavelength this episode, which it's a welcome departure from the knives that were out during our Sundance conversation. So I'm good with that. But yeah, so I didn't mention this before, but this film is based on a short story by Aja.
Oh, that makes sense.
Aja Gabel, I think, something like that. And it feels a lot like that. It feels a lot like a kind of thin, plot, even though the story itself there's a lot going on. And also Mattson Tomlin does the screenplay. And from what I can tell, it seems like a pretty good adapted screenplay. I think they were able to take a short story and kind of stretch it in a way that's not like noticeably stretched. Like, I mean, maybe you might notice it, but it definitely didn't bother me. It felt like this film was kind of going its natural progression.
Yeah, I agree.
My thing with it, what kind of kept me from loving it is that there just weren't any surprises, I guess. You kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, you see everything kind of play out the way you expect it. Even the little things that they're kind of teasing out, they kind of spoil themselves on like some things that maybe some people might. I mean, I think both of us probably would have caught what was going to happen by the very end, but I think anybody can catch it just because they sort of give it away. They're like, like if you're just paying attention, you can be like, wait a minute. And then, this is how the movie's going to end. And for me, that robbed it of all tension because I was just like, all right, well, okay. Like, I don't know. I guess it didn't affect me for that reason because I wasn't at the edge of my seat at all. I wasn't like, and I wasn't that invested, I guess, in like what was going on throughout because it just felt like they were sort of, going back and forth on how they feel about the situation, but it's just the situation never really changed. There were no turns. There's just no energy, I think, to the story. It just kind of goes downhill, and that's just kind of it. And it's good along the way for sure, and it's well executed. And I think Olivia Cooke and Jack O'Connell, my goodness, are just first of all really great actors, and I think that they both are just really electric to watch together. I think they have a really good, they have really good chemistry. I think I really bought their love story. I liked those crazy kids, and me, I'm a big fan of Olivia Cooke, and I think it's hard for me sometimes to watch Olivia Cooke in things because I just think of her character from Thoroughbreds, and I'm like, you're secretly sociopathic. Don't even lie to us right now. But in this movie, I didn't think about that the whole time. So there you go. But I did like it. I did enjoy it.
Yeah, no, like I said before, I think their talents in terms of developing these characters to feel pretty fleshed out and authentic in their relationship. Not to say that the screenplay doesn't do that, but I do think they go a good while to making you believe into this relationship and make you feel endeared to it and ultimately sympathetic towards it. But I have to agree. I think maybe this is the rare time where I think maybe if they didn't focus so much on the two characters but kind of fleshed out the world itself a little bit more, I would have been kind of more immersed in it, because it feels like...
Surprised to hear that from you, Ashton.
Yeah, because I think we outside of our lead characters, we only really see another, like, a set of another couple that's their friends. Like, we see them briefly, and then we kind of hear from their mom, and then we occasionally throughout we'll see different personalities, but we don't really fully get the full story of this world. Like, I felt like a lot of it was a lot of stuff was happening off camera that would have been interesting to see, or a little bit more interesting to know about. That we see like hints of it here and there, and I think some of that would have been investing to know, but maybe that's just me. I don't know if you feel that way, John, or not.
I do. I think that it was kind of unbalanced in how the world itself was reacting to things, because a part of the film, it's like the world is just sort of like, well, like John Mulaney, it's like, this might as well happen. But then other parts of the film, it's like chaos. So it's like, which is it? And I guess part of me, I'm going back and forth a little bit, because I'm like, well, I guess that does kind of match what happened with COVID, because it was in waves of like people just sort of accepting it, but then it would get really bad, and then people would be like, actually, this is terrible, and then it would go back to like, we were overreacting. It kind of reminded me of that. It also kind of reminded me in the way with like COVID, how, I just think that there's a certain line in this movie where it's like, how are you supposed to grieve that everything when everyone is going through the same thing? And that kind of hit me, It's like it does kind of directly tie to like what we've been going through. It's like we're all going through this. So it's like, how are we supposed to like reckon with how we feel about it? Because like so many other people are in totally worse situations, and it's really hard. And I think this movie incidentally tackles it. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I was kind of wrestling with while I was watching, is it better or worse that this is coming out now? Like, it's better in the sense like stuff like that stands out more because there is a thorough line to what everyone's dealing with, but at the same time, like you can't not think of COVID when you're watching this movie. Like, it's just impossible to separate the two. So like, does that rob the movie of its own, world building? Like we were saying, like, are we connecting too much with our lives to the point where we can't really look at this as its own thing? And I don't really know. Like, I think that's going to have to vary for each audience member. Like, I think some people are going to be able to, look at this movie for what it is and be a little bit more taken by it because of what's happening in reality, or they're going to be more taken out of it because they have to constantly associate it with what's going on in the current pandemic. Like we said, not that it's unfair to compare the two, because it's not, it wasn't made with that intention, but at the same time, like, they are releasing it now, so they have to be aware of it. I think I even got an email from one of the people that were marketing that said like a pandemic movie made before COVID or something like that. So it's like, I think they're aware of this. They have to be at this point. And I don't know how I feel about that, but I mean, I think, like we were saying, like, I think by and large it works. Like, I think there's some things that could have been a little bit more fleshed out. I think there's some things that I would have liked to have known a little bit about this world to make it feel a little bit more enriched. But I think, like I said, like, the core relationship is what works, and that's the focus here. And if that works, then the movie works. And I was taken by it by the end.
I think it kind of reminds me. It makes me think about how many films we're going to get like this year, because it was like this at Sundance. There were so many like films that were incidentally about COVID and purposely about COVID, and like, I'm sure our listeners are so sick of it. They're just like why does, like, I watch movies to get away from this subject, and like, even in this episode, it's like we can't escape it, between like Life in a Day we were talking about, and then we were talking about Malcolm and Marie, and it's like, it's just so intertwined in our lives.
Even Glitch in the Matrix.
Is it?
Yeah, because it was filmed during COVID.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, but we didn't have to dwell too much on that. We just kind of mentioned it, but like, I don't know. I feel like it informed so much of our conversations in those other films. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
I guess, like, I don't know. I feel for you listeners. I'm sorry that it keeps getting brought up. It's just,
well, it's not our fault.
It's not our fault. Yeah, it's just so hard to separate the topic, and I'm conflicted because, I mean, art is just reflective, and it's reflecting a very pervasive moment in our lives, and to not mention it would be doing a disservice, to like what this thing is about and what you would experience watching it. And we don't want to make you think that it's like, this like totally removed from like how we're feeling about certain things. So then you end up watching it and be like, why didn't they even bring that up? They're terrible at their jobs.
Well, I mean, art is reflective of the times. And like I said, I mean, the fact they're releasing it now, they have to know that this is going to be directly referencing COVID. So it's like, I don't feel guilty for referencing it or calling back to it. But in terms of me being a film critic, like I wonder if it's doing a disservice to looking the film objectively by bringing so much of COVID baggage into it. But I don't know. I can only look at the film the way I look at it now. So I maybe later on I'll have a different opinion, but that's the way it is. Yeah.
I mean, that speaks exactly, I think, to what you were saying before of like, well, would we be reacting to this movie differently? Would we be liking it more or disliking it if it, if this had come out in 2019? And I'm conflicted on that because on one hand, I want to believe that I would actually like it a lot more because I would be able to just sort of appreciate it without thinking about, these like depressing life events. Instead, that's kind of like intertwined with this, and you can't really just sit with the film and reckon with it. We have to keep comparing it to other things, which I think can be just a little reductive sometimes to like what the author was intending. I wonder what it was like reading that short story, all those years ago when it came out or whenever. So all that said, definitely a good watch. I think people will get a lot out of this. I'm kind of sad that it's not on a streaming service, so it'd be kind of tough for people to see it. But I liked it a good bit. I'm a solid B on Little Fish. Low B. Actually, it was kind of close to B minus, and I'm still kind of reconciling some things with it that kind of let me down. But it's the kind of movie where I think it could have been fantastic. I was really, part of this movie, not in the first bit, but like maybe like around the beginning of the second act, I was like, man, this is really good. This could be like B plus, A minus.
Yeah, I'm not too far from where you are though. I was between a low B and a high B minus, and I think I'll also give it the low B just because, like we said, I think what works is really appealing, and I was taken by it, and like I said, the ending, you can see where it's going, but I was still affected by it. I think it's a sweet movie by and large, and even though it is melancholic and it's by design, like I think what it's able to achieve in terms of setting a mood and getting us into perspective of the characters is effective. Now, how much of that is related to COVID, like we said, that's a whole other discussion, but nevertheless, I think it works, and I think, like you said, I think people are going to be taken by it, even if it is a little depressing by design. But I am curious to see what the broader response is. Obviously, a lot of critics are enjoying it and are getting a lot out of it, but I think by and large fans will too. So this is a good one.
All right. Well, you can you can rent or buy Little Fish on demand right now on all the normal video on demand services. It's only 100 minutes, one of the shortest films we've talked about this week. And I hope people like it. I hope people are able to enjoy it to some degree. And especially I hope that this is the return of Olivia Cooke, and Jack O'Connell. I feel like both of them have sort of been a little bit more obscured lately. I think with Olivia Cooke since like Life Itself, Jack O'Connell since I guess Unbroken. We haven't seen that much of them, have we?
Not that I can recall. Yeah, I mean, I guess like what was that? Money Monster was 2016 as well with Jack O'Connell. So yeah, it's been a bit since I've seen him in something.
I think that was 2015 maybe. Feels a long time ago.
Actually, I didn't even see Money Monster. I just remember seeing the ads.
Oh, I did. That was okay.
It was okay.
It was a decent like George Clooney, thing. But yeah, I think Olivia Cooke though she was in that Vanity Fair thing, the miniseries. So she's been busy.
I don't know what that is, but yeah. I mean, the main thing I remember her from most recently was Ready Player One, which was a couple years ago.
Yeah. But she is fantastic. She's an indie darling, and I think like there's been like an effort to maybe like with Ready Player One to sort of like and Life Itself to like bring her to like a more mainstream Hollywood machine kind of thing, and I don't think that's what is happening. But if it means that we get movies like this with her, I'm a much bigger fan of that arrangement myself. But
yeah. Would it surprise you to note there's some movie out there with her and Christopher Abbott that I haven't seen, but I know exists, and it seems like that's appealing to us, but
there you go.
We haven't seen it. But yeah, she's been doing a lot, and I think she's doing a lot of good stuff. But yeah, it seems like she's one rule away from being like a breakout, but I think I agree with you that the smaller stuff she's doing now is a little bit more interesting anyway. So
at least for the time being.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice, or find us on YouTube, where you can stream our weekly episodes live for even more banter and weird film takes. See you all next time.